If you visit Suffolk, you may be drawn to the jewel which is Bury St Edmunds, with its grand medieval gatehouses, gigantic abbey ruins, and its beautiful cathedral which was renovated during the Victorian period. Bury St Edmunds' name itself gives hints to its long and rich history throughout the ages. But Bury is on the maps, and if you've been watching my videos for a while, you'll know that I like to go a little off the beaten track in search for hidden historic sites concealed in the great British countryside. Introducing Eye Castle. A short journey south from the Norfolk border lays a sleepy village forgotten by time. As you enter the village, you'll be taken through old medieval streets, winding their way up the hill where the castle stands proudly. The giant mound you see today was originally built by the Normans not long after the conquest of 1066 in a classic Motte and Bailey design. The outer bailey is now a residential close consisting of domestic houses. An interesting note is that Eye Castle is one of just 2 castles listed in the Domesday Book. This was because Eye had its marker inside the bailey walls rather than outside in the local village. As was the norm during the Norman period, the castle belonged to various local lords or barons, one being Robert Mallet, who was exiled by King Henry I, who confiscated Eye Castle upon Robert's death in 1106 AD. During the 1140s, a civil war broke out in England known as the Anarchy. This civil war occurred when King Stephen, the son of Henry I, who died in 1135, failed to enforce loyalty amongst his court, which led to the late King Henry's daughter raising an army in an attempt to claim the throne in 1139. But that's a topic for another day. The Civil War brought an uneasy amount of fighting to East Anglia, something that the area had largely managed to avoid since the Norman conquest, and indeed continued to avoid throughout the many English infighting which occurred in the centuries that followed. Although not getting bogged down in direct conflict initially, Eye Castle saw various skirmishes and brushes with warfare during this turbulent time. However, in 1173 AD, Eye Castle was besieged by Hugh Bigod, who was a prominent and influential lord in the local area, owning the nearby Bungay Castle and its much bigger sister, the giant Framlingham Castle. Luckily, the defenders of Eye Castle were able to successfully fend off Bigod's forces, but the scars induced from the siege meant that the castle needed to be completely rebuilt, this time with the addition of 2 square towers built on the north side of the inner bailey. Sadly, this new improved castle was short-lived, as in 1265, Eye Castle was besieged and subsequently sacked during the Second Barons' War. A stark reminder that, even in areas known for being particularly peaceful, such as East Anglia, conflict has still forced some majestic historic sites into destruction way before their time. After being sacked, the castle was largely abandoned and left to ruin, and that's the story of Eye Castle. Almost. For centuries, the castle lay dormant as a romantic ruin over the quiet village, a ghostly reminder of authority and warfare. There had been some temporary uses over the years, a windmill or a workhouse, but in 1844 the castle became the home for Batman. Yes, you heard that right. Sir Edward Kerrison, an officer in the British Army, purchased the castle and built a house where the ruinous medieval keep stood at the top of the hill. This house was reserved for Kerrison's Batmen. Now, Batmen were personal servants assigned to commissional officers. Kerrison's Batman saved his life during the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, and as such, Edward Kerrison rewarded this heroic deed with the newly reconstructed Eye Castle. The walls and foundations of this new house is largely what you see today, being built with a mix of flint and red brick. The house was built to resemble a Victorian impression of the medieval shell keep from the 13th century, and survived for over 100 years until it gradually began to fall back into ruin, with high winds causing it to collapse in 1965. Of course, if you are visiting Eye, you would be remiss to pass the gorgeous Gothic church which sits just on the other side of a road to the castle. This ornate medieval work of art has been improved over the centuries, with its south doorway surviving as one of the oldest sections of the church, being around 750 years old. Further alterations were made in the early 14th century, but much of the finery proudly on display today dates back to the 15th century. The most notable features on the outside are the classic 15th century Anglian flushwork flint walls and the beautiful Gothic windows, and on the inside, an awe-inspiring painted ceiling and rood screen which also originally dates back to the 15th century, but of course this has been repainted and touched up several times over the centuries that followed. Indeed, this is among the most impressive examples of a 15th century rood screen and ceiling in all of East Anglia. If you're a fan of fine art in medieval architecture, you'll also enjoy the neighbouring house, which is the original medieval guild hall. A fantastically characterful timber building which also dates back to the 15th century, evidently suggesting that the village of Eye had a considerable budget for architectural spending sprees, which makes you ponder why it appears that no money was allocated to the reconstruction of the castle during this time. Usually ruins like this just get turned into a private residence for the local lord, mayor, or other person of significance. Regardless, upon walking round the guild hall, you may feast your eyes on the beautiful carvings, most notably that of Archangel Gabriel. The castle is now freely open to the public during reasonable daylight hours from April to October. You may explore the rest of Eye at your own pace when you visit, as the village is full of medieval and Tudor dwellings, as well as a healthy mix of various other post-medieval architectural types. But for now, thanks for watching.